Well, I have a whole lot of azaleas and camellias to plant. They're all acid-loving shrubs, so I've put together a specific recipe of amendments to do that, but I thought I would also just kind of give you a primer on how to plant a shrub. And these are some of my basic tips. I've got 4 or 5 of them. So number one, let me talk a little bit about what soil amendments I'm going to be using. Now, azaleas and camellias like excellent drainage. They have kind of a shallow root system and they need excellent drainage, and they also want their pH to be on the 5 to 6.5 side. So what I'm doing is giving them off to a really, really good start. Now, I don't do this kind of TLC with every kind of shrub. I probably wouldn't do it with a boxwood. I probably wouldn't do it with a tree, because they need to learn how to grow in the soil God gave them. But in this case, I really want it to be loose and friable, and I'm giving them a little bit extra TLC since everything around here, including myself, has been traumatized by the recent ice and windstorms. So here is my recipe. Number one, okay, how pretty is this? Do you know how much joy this gives me, you guys? These are the shredded leaves. Look how pretty they are. The shredded leaves from my Works leaf shredder that I told you about before. I'll put a link below. I have a whole bag of them. I'm so proud. I have a whole bag of them. Okay, so that's going to be part one to why I've gotten this blend. Then I have some homemade compost here. It could have probably cooked for a little bit longer, but what the heck, I needed to go ahead and use it, and it already looks really beautiful. Now, to address their acid needs, I'm using some pecan hulls. This is something you typically, or at least at my home improvement store, I can't find, so I have to go to an independent nursery to find it. And then this is some of that landscaper's mix that I always tell you about that I get at Lowe's. Here's the bag, because I know you'll ask me. It's Happy Grows Landscapers Mix. And then I'm going to add, again, I don't do this all of the time, but I'm going to add a little bit of Osmocote slow release fertilizer to the bottom of the hole. So let me kind of start with that. So what I've done, so that you guys didn't have to stand here and watch me dig the hole, I have dug a hole about 2.5 times the width of this pot. And I'm getting ready to plant an autumn Sundance Encore azalea. Okay, so you can see that I've got a pretty good hole going here. Now I've roughed up the bottom. I'm going to plant this at the level that it's growing in the pot. But first I'm going to add a little bit of this Osmocote, kind of rake it in. And then the other thing that I'm going to do is notice how the sides of this hole are kind of smooth. They're almost slick. And that will be more difficult being that solid. It's a more difficult surface for those roots to penetrate than if I really kind of rough them up. So around the circumference of the hole, I'm going to rough up the sides so that they have more texture and also more surface area and soft surface area for those roots to penetrate. Now, all in all, this is pretty good soil here, and the reason it's not too bad is because I had recently planted a boxwood in here that got destroyed in the ice storm. So this is the new resident of this hole, and I'm going to gently take it out. And I did water this lightly not too long ago. Now what I'm going to do is kind of rough up the sides a little bit so that these roots don't grow in a circle. And you can see that it is just about the top of this hole. I might put a little bit more dirt. I'd rather err on the side of planting it a bit too high than too low, because I can always add some mulch at the top. So now that I've got it in place, I'm going to stand back, kind of see where it is. Okay, take it out for a moment. And I'm going to put just a bit of my magic mix. Okay, so I'm just going to mix all of this together. And you guys, I know this may seem like a strange thing to say, but this smells wonderful. It smells like fall, and it reminds me of being a kid and jumping in piles of leaves when you were little. Stuart, did you ever do that? Yeah. Okay, so I've got a good mix of it over here. It's pretty, pretty stuff. Okay, now I'm going to put a little bit at the bottom of the hole. I'm going to spread it around. Now, at this point, if I were planting a regular shrub, I probably would just use the soil that I took out and backfill it with that soil. But in this case, again, I'm going to give it a little bit more attention. But before I add any of that amendment, I am going to really water it good. I'm watering the base of the hole. We haven't had a lot of rain, so it's been very, very dry. And even though azaleas grow in a shallow fashion and their roots don't go real deep, I still want them to go as deep as possible. Okay. Let me give that root ball. Okay, so at this point, what I'm going to do is I am going to add some of my mix. Thank you, Stuart. And you can see just from the looseness of that, how easy it's going to be for those roots to penetrate this luscious soil. Now that I've put in some of the little helpers, the amendments, I'm going to add a little bit of the backfill soil. Now I'm working in the flower bed, so I just dug out this soil and dumped it to the side. But if I were working in the lawn, I would have put a tarp down or something to catch this soil. Now, put more of this in. I love being able to identify the different leaves in here. I see lots of my Japanese red maple leaves. Okay. A little bit more of the soil. And what soil comes out in clumps, I'm going to break it up because it's all about loose, chocolatey cake textured soil. So I'm on my rear end and my hands and knees, and so is Stuart, because he's trying to get the details of this for you guys. Okay, I'm gonna do some more of my magic blend. So basically I'm just alternating. Soil with amendment, soil with amendment, soil with amendment. Give it a little bit of a trench. around the perimeter. I'm going to water it in. And if our conditions remain really dry, then I'm going to keep an eye on it, especially because it's been extremely windy lately. So I'm going to keep an eye on it till it gets established. And hopefully that will be sooner rather than later. So there you go. There are my steps. Dig a big hole 2.5 times the size of the root ball itself. You want to plant it at the same soil level as it was growing in the pot. If it requires amendments, then use some organic amendments. Before you really put any kind of additives in there, make sure to water it really well and then backfill with all of that rich, beautiful soil. Ready for this azalea and lots of earthworms to move in. And there you go.